14.3 Session Plan, Session and Program Reviews. Client aims. Program's aims for the entire thing was weight loss and muscle building, which was what the client wanted to achieve. How this can be measured is the aims would be measured through progressive overload, because as the weeks go on, the client's fitness levels will increase and improvement should be shown. At the end of the 6-week program tests, the tests that were conducted before the program will be conducted at the end to see how much they have improved by, to see whether the training program was effective or not. However, the specific session aims was to improve power within the legs. This was because although the client achieved very good results in the standing broad jump, standing vertical jump test, there's always room for improvement. So I decided to choose plyometric training for this, mainly because it focuses on leg power and it's just a good test, a good session to use. This can be measured. The client said they wanted to build muscle, so thereby the session will improve the strength of the muscles and slightly build the muscle up with the repetition that it has of using the legs in a particular way. Next is a risk assessment. Risk assessment has to be done before, so it outlines any hazards and who are at risk of these hazards when conducting a session. Also, controls to be put in place just helps reduce the chances of this happening. For example, for the first one, I have pull a muscle. Control to be put in place would be a warm-up. Therefore, by having the warm-up, it warms the muscles up, so it makes them more pliable, so that this reduces the chance of it happening. However, there is still a chance of it. Then you've got the likelihood, outcome and risk rating, and you have also actions necessary, which is for pulling the muscle, stop the exercise and apply ice to the muscle, and you'd also stretch out. Here I have the client PAR-Q. This was done before the session, so that you know any sort of risks that the client suffers from, so that you're able to plan the session around it, or whether you know not to do and what to do. So in this PAR-Q, I asked whether they suffer from asthma, bronchitis, heart problems, chest pains, diabetes, high blood pressure, epilepsy, or any other, and the client had none, which was very good. Also, I asked if older family members suffered from any illness, and if so, what it was. And he said that there was a possibility of heart disease, but tends to happen later on in life, so that wasn't so much of a risk that I needed to take in. And I just asked if if we were not aware of any sort of illness or damage to the body, it could be harmful to him, and he knew that. Here you have some averages and the client's results for some tests. For the resting heart rate, the client achieved 64 beats per minute, and the average is 72 beats per minute. So as the client got 64, that's very good. It shows that he's on the healthier side. As the lower the heart rate is, the healthier the person is. Some target heart rate zone values. These were done because the client wanted to achieve weight loss. So using 60 and 70% of the heart rate means it's in the fat burning processes when getting to that stage. So for 60% for the client, it was 121 beats per minute, roughly around that area. And 70% was 142.1 beats per minute. Whereas for the average, it's for 60% it's 129 beats per minute, and for 70% it's 138, 139 roughly. For resting blood pressure, my client had 129 systolic pressure and 56 diastolic pressure. Shows that his blood pressure is very good. As you can see, the average was 120 and at 80. Diastolic pressure was probably a bit low, but the systolic pressure was around about the same. So it shows that his blood pressure is good as well. The peak flow result, my client achieved 500. However, the average was 600. Due to this lower score, it might have been due to his past of smoking, which doesn't help. So that's probably a factor as to why he couldn't achieve a high result. And my client's BMI is 18.5, which is considered healthy, and the average is 21, so he's doing very well on that side. So this is the exercise session content regarding the facilities and resources. The location was going to be in the Basilisk Sports Hall, and the facility needs was I needed about roughly 1/6 of the sports hall to conduct my session, and the resources needed were cones, a measuring tape, boxes and stopwatch. Then health and safety considerations were, before the session, PAR-Q was done, which I explained before, and it's just documented to ensure the client was ready to take part in the physical activity. I also asked if they were wearing any appropriate clothing and not wearing any loose jewellery. This was so that with the clothing they're able to do their full best and they weren't safe, and so they weren't going to cause harm to themselves. For example, it's just say they weren't wearing appropriate footwear, they might have slipped over and hurt themselves. So just asking them if they had appropriate clothing was necessary to make sure that no injuries were to occur. Also asked about the loose jewellery. This is so that it doesn't get caught in anything, especially like a chain or a necklace or something. It might get caught and cause damage to the neck. So that had to be asked as well. So emergency procedures. I would ensure before the session that I know where the fire exits are and assembly points. From the Basilisk Sports Hall, there are emergency exits each side of the sports hall lengthways, and from the fire exits you need to make your way to the netball courts in case there is of a fire or a fire drill. And if there is any serious injury to occur that required emergency services, there is a telephone in the PE office, or if I wasn't have a mobile on me at the time. Issues arising from the risk assessment. So before conducting the session, I went around the sports hall to make sure that there were not any risk hazards, to make sure an injury doesn't occur. This might be a wet floor or rubbish on the floor, so the participant might slip over. So this is done to make sure of this. Also, I made the risk assessment before the session to highlight any hazards that will happen and possible ways to reduce the chances of happening. Right, so this is the session content. This is my introduction. When first meeting my client for the session, I will ask how they've been and if they suffered any injuries between the PAR-Q and the beginning of the session. If they have suffered any injuries, there's a chance that I'd have to slightly change the session so that it adapts around this, so not to cause any strain to the injury. And yeah, for warm-up, one set was 10-meter jog, a 10-meter run, a 10-meter sprint, a 10-meter run, and a 10-meter jog. This sort of goes up in a pyramid shape. This is the pulse raiser, so to get the blood flowing and muscles warm before stretches. For the stretches, I had calf strokes over 10 meters, lunges over 10 meters, lunges with a twist at the body over 10 meters. As you can see, these stretches focus within the legs as they are the main use within the session. However, I did involve some upper body stretches as it would be appropriate, as the upper body is used to help generate height and strength within the session. So this was a chest stretch where you place your palm against the wall and this was held for 10 seconds. And a standing hamstring stretch was also done for 10 seconds. And a quadricep stretch was also held for 10 seconds. These stretches have been put in place to target the muscles that will be used within the session and reduce the chances of any muscle injuries. The main content. One set was 12 30cm box jumps, 12 standard broad jumps, 12 standard vertical jumps, and as few jumps as you can within a 5 meter distance. So this would be getting a big stride between each step and trying to go as far as you can. After 2 sets of this, a 45-second rest is to be done. Then this set would be continued, and this is to be done 4 times. These drills are being done because it targets strength within the legs to be able to prove their results in standing vertical jump and standing broad jump. In a game, this component of fitness will be used when jumping to head the ball or block, or sprinting, as it simulates the movement within the long strides within the 5 meters. For the cool down, I had a pulse decliner, which was a jog of the width from the core and back. Then the stretches consisted of calf strokes over 10 meters, lunges over 10 meters, and lunges with a twist, similarly to the warm-ups ones. Then I had across the body shoulder stretch over 10 meters, then a chest stretch against the wall held for 15 seconds, a sitting hamstring stretch held for 15 seconds, and a quadricep stretch held for 15 seconds. This is just targeting the muscles to reduce the chances of any injury or DOMS. For ending the session, I made sure all the equipment that was used was safely put away without any damages, and if there was, it was to be reported so that it doesn't cause any harm to future participants. For client feedback, it was all quite good. Most positives, a little bit of negative. For some positives, the client said is that it was well planned out and that I pushed the client, and the warm up and cool down were good, like e.g. the stretches and the pulse raiser, and it was well planned out, like I said before. The observer said overall the session was very good and it was well planned out, and I was quite assertive in making sure that I wanted to do the things I wanted him to do. For example, later on into the session, when it was coming up to the last set or two, the client wasn't putting in as much effort, so I made sure I wanted him to know that I wanted him to push himself to his limits. However, some negatives, the observer said that more observational technique could be done. So this was just making sure that in the jumps, especially standing vertical jumps, just making sure that the legs are roughly hips width apart and making sure you get that roughly 90-degree bend within the legs before powering up and jumping in the air. Strengths and areas of development regarding you leading your session. Personally, I thought I communicated well and demonstrated the technique to each stretch and exercise, and I pushed the limits of my client. This is so to get the most out of the session. However, I thought I probably could have been more enthusiastic and had a better range of stretches to the warm up and cool down, because as you could tell before, the stretches and the warm up and cool down were quite similar. I probably could have added a bit more variation within the warm up, possibly to maybe relate it to a football, which is my client's main sport. So that could have been done. However, the cool down, I don't think there's a massive variation you can do, as it's targeting the muscles to make sure that all the lactic acids can get out of the used muscles.